The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive Timelines members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The Death Star hangs above Alderaan like a gray moon that was never meant to orbit anything. In the hangar of Docking Bay 327, a ramp descends from a captured rebel blockade runner, and Darth Vader walks down it into the recycled air of the Empire's greatest weapon, and the stormtroopers lining the bay do not breathe until he passes them. This is the quality of his presence, not fear exactly, but the certainty that fear is the correct response. He moves through the hangar the way gravity moves, not urgently, not slowly, but with the total indifference of something that has never needed to hurry, because nothing has ever escaped it. He already knows. The moment the report reached him aboard the Devastator, an escape pod, no life signs, a distress beacon, Tatooine, he felt it. Not the pod. Not the beacon. Something older. Something that pulled at the underside of his awareness like a hook set years ago, finally going taut. The droids had the Death Star plans. That part is administrative. What lives beneath the administrative certainty is something he will not name, because naming it would require him to feel it, and Darth Vader does not feel. He processes. He acts. He continues. He walks. The Tantive 4's crew are already in custody. Vader moves through the corridors of the captured ship with the unhurried efficiency of a man performing an inspection, which is precisely what this is. He observes the rebel soldiers in their white uniforms, young faces, frightened eyes, and catalogs them without sentiment. Intelligence assets, most of them. He will extract what they know. What he is looking for is not among them. It is Princess Leia Organa he wants. Daughter of Bail Organa, Senator of Alderaan, architect of the Rebel Alliance's intelligence networks. The Force traces her presence through the ship's corridors like a scent, warm, controlled, deliberately quiet. She is suppressing herself. It is a competent attempt. His soldiers find her behind a blast door in the aft section, weapon drawn. Vader watches from the corridor mouth as the stormtroopers restrain her. And when they bring her forward, chin lifted, dark eyes carrying something that refuses to be called fear, he feels the recognition before he understands it. Her Force presence. Clean and vast and structured like architecture. It is not the signature of training. It is the signature of nature, of someone whose connection to the Force is so fundamental that she carries it the way other people carry breath, without effort, without awareness, without limits she has yet found the edges of. He knows this signature. He has felt its shape before. Not from her. From someone else. He files it. Darth Vader, she says. Her voice does not shake. Only you could be so bold. The Imperial Senate will not sit still for this. When they hear that you've attacked a diplomatic, Senator Organa. His voice comes from the vocoder flat and absolute. The way a wall is flat and absolute. Your ship has been transmitting to rebel agents. You have been caught in the act of treason against the Empire. She does not blink. I'm on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan. Whatever you think you've, take her to a detention cell, he says. I will deal with her personally. The stormtroopers move her down the corridor. She turns once to look back at him, not in fear, but in the manner of someone memorizing a face, cataloging a threat, already planning. He watches her go and does not move until she is out of sight. Then he stands in the corridor alone for exactly 4 seconds, which is not something Darth Vader does. He continues walking. Grand Moff Tarkin is waiting in the conference room at the Death Star's command center, his hands folded behind his back, his gray uniform pressed into geometric precision. He is the only man in the Empire who occupies the same room as Vader without the posture of someone waiting to be struck. The Death Star plans must be recovered, Tarkin says, without preamble, which is why their working relationship has functioned as long as it has. The rebel on the ship sent them ahead, Vader says, to an agent. On Tatooine. Tarkin turns slightly. You're certain? The escape pod was jettisoned before we captured the vessel. No life signs. The plans were not aboard. Then we have a problem. We have a direction, Vader says. Tatooine I will. You will interrogate the princess first. Tarkin's voice carries the flat authority of a man who has signed enough death warrants that authority has become a reflex. We need the rebel base. The plans are one objective. The base is another. Attend to the objective in front of you. Vader looks at him across the gray table. The plans will be retrieved through other channels. The princess is here. Begin there. There is a pause that would be uncomfortable if either of these men were capable of discomfort. As you wish, Vader says. He goes to the detention level alone. He does not bring officers. He does not bring an interrogation droid, not yet. He goes because he wants to understand what he felt in the corridor, what the shape of her presence reminded him of, what recognition lives beneath the recognition and refuses to identify itself. The cell is standard Imperial gray. Leia Organa sits on the narrow bench with her hands folded in her lap and her spine completely straight, which is the posture of someone who has decided that the only thing left under her control is her posture. She looks at him when he enters and does not flinch. "I know who you are," she says. "Then you know," he replies, "that cooperation is the more comfortable option. I don't have anything that belongs to you. The Death Star plans, I'm a senator on a diplomatic mission. Whatever you think you intercepted," he reaches out with the Force. Not violently. Not yet. He reaches in the way a hand reaches toward heat, to measure, to calibrate, to understand the shape of what is there. Her mind, when he touches the edge of it, is structured like a vault. Not rigid, but organized, deliberately, by someone who has been trained in resistance techniques she has never needed to deploy until now. And beneath the vault, that presence again. That Force signature. Warm and vast and carrying something in it, that. He stops. He pulls back. He stands in the cell, and the silence in him is not the silence of control. It is the silence of a man who has pressed his palm against a wall and felt it move. "You have nothing to fear from cooperation," he says, which is not true, but he says it anyway because he needs to say something that contains no question. She looks at him. Her dark eyes are doing something he does not have the vocabulary for, not analyzing, not fearing, but seeing, in the way of someone who has been in rooms full of powerful men her entire life, and has developed the specific skill of perceiving what is underneath the performance of power. "I have nothing to tell you," she says. He leaves. He does not go to Tarkin. He goes to the observation deck. Alderaan hangs below the Death Star, blue and green and white, a planet that has no standing army, that has been governed for generations by people who believed that civilization was an argument against violence, and not merely the winner of one. He has been to Alderaan. Once, before the suit, before everything. He stands at the observation window, and the planet fills it. And he does not think about Alderaan. He thinks about what he felt in that cell. Her Force presence. The structure of it. The texture of it. He has felt that texture twice in his life. Once, years ago, before everything, when he pressed his palm to his wife's rounded abdomen at 6 months, and something inside her, not yet a person, barely a presence, turned toward him in the Force with a warmth that broke him open in ways he has never been broken since. And he pulled his hand away and laughed, and Padme asked him what was wrong, and he said nothing. "It's nothing. Come here." And once just now, in that cell, the thought arrives without drama. It arrives the way facts arrive when you have been refusing to look at them long enough. Complete. Already assembled, requiring nothing from you except acknowledgement. He grips the observation railing. The metal bends under his fingers. Tarkin's voice comes through the comm behind him. "Lord Vader. We're ready to proceed with the demonstration. Governor Tarkin requires your, I will be there," Vader says. He does not release the railing for another 4 seconds. Then he does, and he turns, and the bent metal stays bent, and he walks. He is not in the command center when Alderaan dies. He is in the corridor outside it, standing very still, when the Death Star's superstructure vibrates with the discharge of something that has never been fired before, at something that has never been destroyed before. And through the Force he feels an entire planet's worth of life go out. Not one death, not 100, not 1,000. Billions, It hits him like a physical blow, like every Death Star he helped design, every component he approved, every officer he choked for inefficiency. Every year he spent building this weapon for a man who told him it was necessary. All of it arriving simultaneously from one direction with the force of a collapsing star. He does not stagger, his body does not allow it. But inside the suit, in the dark where no one can see, something cracks, not breaks. Cracks, a line running through something that was already under structural strain, that has been under structural strain for 13 years, that has been held together by rage and purpose and the cold discipline of a man who converted his grief into function, because function was the only thing left. The crack does not close. He walks into the command center. Tarkin stands at the window with his hands behind his back, watching the debris field expand where a planet was. He does not look triumphant. He looks satisfied, which is worse. Effective, Vader says. Extremely, Tarkin replies. Vader looks at the debris field, at what used to be Alderaan, at the expanding ring of rock and gas and light that used to be 2 billion people who believed that civilization was an argument and not just a victor. The crack in him does not close. It grows. The Millennium Falcon drops out of hyperspace into the Yavin system trailing debris, and the particular silence of a ship that has survived something it was not designed to survive. Han Solo is already arguing with the navigation computer before the stars finish resolving. Chewbacca is running damage assessments. C-3PO is cataloging everything that is wrong with the structural integrity in descending order of urgency, which means he has been talking for 4 minutes without pause. R2-D2 beeps twice at something in the data stream, and then goes quiet in the specific way that droids go quiet when they have found something they do not have a category for. In the rear hold, Luke Skywalker sits on the floor, not collapsed, not unconscious, sitting, deliberately, with his back against the cold hull and his knees drawn up, and his eyes open, staring at the grating between his boots. Ben Kenobi is gone. He knows this the way you know a tooth has been pulled, not the presence of pain exactly, but the sudden enormous absence where something was, and the raw awareness of the space it occupied. He does not cry. He does not have the architecture for what just happened yet. The grief will build its own structure eventually, but right now there is only the absence and the hum of the Falcon's engines, and the distant argument between Han and the navigation computer, and the feeling, which he cannot account for and will not try to, that Ben is not entirely gone. Not gone. Just elsewhere, in a place that doesn't have coordinates. He closes his eyes. He breathes. In the Force, which he cannot yet name or navigate with any precision, which he knows only as a warmth that sometimes answers him and sometimes ignores him, something shifts. A current moving in a direction he doesn't recognize. Not toward him. Not away. Across, like something turning over, deep underwater, disturbing the surface from below. He opens his eyes. He does not know what that was. He goes to find the others. The rebel base on Yavin 4 receives them with organized urgency. The Death Star plans are in R2's memory banks. The briefing room fills with people who need the plans to mean something, to point to something, to give the rebellion an action to take against a weapon that destroyed Alderaan 12 hours ago. Luke sits in the briefing and watches General Dodonna trace the Death Star schematic with a laser pointer, and he hears the words, thermal exhaust port, proton torpedoes, 1 in a million shot, and he files them. He is present. He is functional. He is doing the thing that people do after loss, when there is something immediate that needs doing. He is deferring the grief in favor of the task, which is a skill his uncle taught him without knowing he was teaching it. Leia sits across the table from him. She has changed into clean clothes. Her hair is freshly arranged. Her face gives away nothing that she has chosen not to give away, and she has chosen to give away very little, and Luke watches her in the way he has been watching her since the Falcon, with the specific attention of someone who recognizes something in another person that they have not yet identified. She looks up and finds him watching. He looks back at the schematic. After the briefing, in the corridor outside, she finds him. You were with him, she says. When he Yes, a pause. The corridor is loud with the controlled chaos of a base preparing for an assault with a 12-hour window. Nobody looks at them. Everyone has somewhere urgent to be. Was he? She stops. Starts again. Did he know what was going to happen? Luke thinks about this honestly. He thinks about the way Ben stopped, the way he turned, the way his eyes found Vader across the hangar and held his gaze for one long moment before he lifted his blade. I think he chose it, Luke says. Leia looks at him for a moment. Then she nods, once in the manner of someone filing information rather than processing it, which is how she handles things that are too large to handle right now. Good, she says, which is not the word Luke expected. But he understands what she means. She means, good, he was not taken. Good, it was his. Good, it was not done to him. I'm sorry about Alderaan, Luke says. She does not answer immediately. The corridor noise continues around them. Running feet, equipment carts, shouted coordinates. Help me blow up the thing that did it, she says. He goes to the hangar to find his X-Wing. 40 minutes before the Rebel assault launches, in a command center aboard the Death Star, Darth Vader stands before a holographic projection of the Yavin system and says nothing for longer than anyone in the room is comfortable with. The officers around him fill the silence with progress reports and targeting calculations and fuel consumption data. Because officers who serve under Darth Vader learn quickly that silence from him is not an invitation to observe. Silence from him is a gap that needs filling, and the consequences of leaving it empty are substantially worse than the consequences of filling it incorrectly. He is not listening to them. He is thinking about the girl in the cell. He is thinking about the shift he felt in the Force, subtle, directional, like something large turning in deep water, which he noticed because he has spent 13 years developing the discipline of noticing, precisely because he cannot afford not to. And the shift was familiar. It was the same texture as her. And it was also the same texture as something else. Something he has been refusing to examine for 13 years, because examination requires acknowledgement, and acknowledgement requires him to become someone he has not been allowed to be. He turns from the holographic display. The Rebel attack, he says. They will target the thermal exhaust port. One of the officers, young, earnest, the kind of face that will not look like that for much longer, says, "Sir, the calculations show that a direct hit would require an impossible shot," Vader says. "Yes. Find me a pilot who has made impossible shots before." The officer blinks. "Sir, the attack will come from their best pilot. Identify him." He pauses. "And prepare my tie advanced." "Lord Vader, this is Admiral Motti, whose survival has been a prolonged administrative accident. Surely the station's turbolasers are designed for capital ships," Vader says. "Not single-seat fighters running a trench at close range." He turns back to the display. "I will deal with the pilots myself." The room recalibrates around this information. Nobody argues. He should be thinking about the battle. He is partly thinking about the battle. The part of him that is always a military mind, the general, the tactician, the machine Palpatine built to process threats and eliminate them, is already running the trench defense in his head, already calculating approach vectors and timing windows and the precise firepower required to prevent a single proton torpedo from reaching a 2-meter exhaust port. The other part of him is thinking about a warmth he felt in the Force 23 hours ago when he pressed his palm to a rounded abdomen, and something not yet a person turned toward him in the dark. He cannot have both of these thoughts simultaneously. He cannot integrate them. So he does what he has done for 13 years when the unintegrable arrives. He puts it below. Not gone, not resolved. Below, where the suit keeps everything that cannot be acknowledged, in the same compartment as Padme's face and his mother's voice, and the smell of a desert morning before he understood what he was going to become. Below, he walks to the flight deck. The battle, when it comes, is exactly what he calculated. The rebel fighters are good. Better than good. Trained and desperate and fighting with the specific intensity of people who have already lost everything except the thing they are currently defending. They run the trench in waves. His TIE flankers clear them. He settles in behind the last group himself. 2 fighters. Then one final pilot whose force signature, when he locks in behind him, is so bright, so clean, so devastatingly familiar that his hand tightens on the control column without his permission. He has the shot. He has had the shot for 3 seconds. He does not take it. He does not know yet why he does not take it. The part of him that is the military mind says, "You have the shot. Take it." The part of him that is the machine says, "Eliminate the threat. It is what you do." The part of him that has been below for 13 years says nothing, because that part does not speak. It only pulls. He has the shot. He does not take it. Then the force shifts, another presence, sudden and massive and arriving from above, and something strikes his flanker, and his tie spins out into space, and the trench below him fills with light. And the exhaust port that every officer told him could not be hit receives a proton torpedo from a pilot who was not supposed to exist. The Death Star comes apart in pieces, each one enormous, and Vader watches through the cracked canopy of his spinning fighter as the thing he spent 13 years building dissolves into fire. He feels it in the Force before the light reaches him. The crack that started over Alderaan gets wider. Not breaks. Not yet. But wider. He does not try to close it. Vader's TIE Advance drifts. Not crashes. Not burns. Drifts. Spinning slowly in the debris field that used to be the Empire's greatest achievement, tumbling end over end in the patient way of objects that have been removed from all systems of control and are now subject only to physics. The canopy is cracked along one side. The port stabilizer is gone. The fighter is, by any operational definition, dead in space. Inside it, Darth Vader is not. He braces against the spin with the Force the way an experienced sailor braces against a wave. Not fighting it, not surrendering to it, but finding the still point at its center and holding there while everything else moves. The cockpit is dark except for the emergency panel throwing red light across the black armor, and he runs the damage assessment the way he runs all assessments, systematically, without judgment, beginning with the variables he can control and moving toward the variables he cannot. Propulsion, gone. Navigation, gone. Life support, 90 minutes, possibly less with the canopy seal compromised. Communications, partially functional, enough to transmit on Imperial frequencies if anyone in this system is still listening on Imperial frequencies, which seems unlikely given that the primary Imperial asset in this system has just become the largest debris field in recent galactic history. He transmits anyway. A single tight beam pulse on a frequency that goes to one destination and nowhere else, Palpatine's private channel, the one that bypasses every relay and routing station in the Imperial network and connects directly, the way a nerve connects directly, without intermediary. He does not know what he will say when the connection opens. He knows that it must open. He knows that Palpatine will have felt the Death Star's destruction in the Force the way you feel a limb removed, not data, not report, but absence where presence was, enormous and immediate. The channel opens. Palpatine's voice arrives without preamble, which means he has been waiting. "My friend," he says, and the word friend in his mouth is a tool with a specific purpose, the way all his words are tools. "Tell me you are alive." "I am alive," Vader says. The station gone silence on the channel that Vader has learned, over 13 years, to read the way other people read faces. This silence is not grief. It is not shock. It is the silence of recalculation, of a mind that operates in decades and contingencies rapidly reorganizing around a new configuration. "The rebel pilot," Palpatine says finally. "A single proton torpedo. Exhaust port." Vader pauses. The engineers who flagged the vulnerability were correct. Yes, another pause. They were dealt with, as I recall. They were. A regrettable decision in retrospect. His voice carries no regret. "You will require extraction, Lord Vader." "I am dispatching. I have already arranged it." He has not. He is saying it because he needs to be in a ship that Palpatine has not dispatched before he can think clearly about what happened in that trench. An Imperial destroyer is en route from the Outer Rim. I will transmit my coordinates. Good, the voice on the channel shifts. a microscopic modulation that Vader, who has spent 13 years listening to it, reads as interest being redirected, attention sharpening towards something. And the rebel fleet? Dispersed. No coordinated pursuit was possible before the station's destruction. We will find them. Not a question. Not a plan. A statement of the future as already settled, which is how Palpatine relates to the future, as a territory he has already charted, already claimed. Rest, my friend. You have survived something significant. The channel closes. Vader sits in the spinning dark and does not rest. The Imperial Star Destroyer Vehement retrieves him 4 hours later, which is 3 hours and 40 minutes after he told Palpatine extraction was already arranged, and 40 minutes after he actually arranged it. The hangar bay receives his dead tie on a tow cable, and the deck crew works around it with the practiced efficiency of people who have learned that commentary on Lord Vader's operational situations is not compatible with continued employment. He walks off the retrieval platform and the officers part for him, and he goes directly to the bridge and does not speak to anyone until he reaches the viewport, where he stands looking at the star field and the distant glow that is the Yavin system receding. Captain Yorick, a competent man with the specific quality of competence that expresses itself through silence rather than demonstration, comes to stand beside him at a respectful distance. Lord Vader, your orders? Plot a course for Simoon 1, Vader says. Imperial Weapons Factory. We will require rearmament assessment following the station's loss. Yes, sir. Yorick pauses. And after Simoon, I will advise. Yorick withdraws. Vader continues looking at the star field. The Vehement's hyperdrive is cycling, he can feel it in the deck plating, the low harmonic of the motivator building toward the jump threshold, and he has perhaps 90 seconds before the stars streak into hyperspace lines and Yavin 4 is gone from any reasonable definition of proximity. He uses the 90 seconds. The pilot in the trench. The force signature that hit him when he settled into firing position. Bright and clean and vast, and specific in the way that only one kind of signature is specific. The kind that carries the genetic echo of someone you once were before you became something else. He has been refusing the knowledge since the Death Star corridor, since the Tantive 4, since the detention cell where Leia Organa sat with her spine straight and her force presence radiating the specific texture of someone whose blood is familiar to his blood, even when everything else has been destroyed. He refuses it now. He puts it back below. He puts it below with Padme's face and his mother's voice and the Jedi he used to be. And he stands at the viewport and watches the stars for the last 3 seconds before they streak. And he is very still, and the stillness is not peace. The Vehement jumps to hyperspace. Simoon 1 is a gray world of factory complexes and imperial supply chains, the kind of planet that exists not to be inhabited but to produce things for other places to use. The weapons factory here, Facility 1-1, the largest in the Outer Rim, runs on slave labor organized into shifts, and the slaves have numbers instead of names, which is an administrative efficiency the Empire implemented 7 years ago, and which Vader has never examined closely enough to have an opinion about. He examines it now, walking the factory floor. He does not intend to examine it. He intends to assess the weapons production lines and cross-reference the facility's output against the projected armament requirements for the fleet restructuring that will follow the Death Star's loss. This is a practical errand. It has nothing to do with the crack in him that started over Alderaan and widened over Yavin 4. But the factory floor is long, and he walks it, and on either side of the walkway, behind transparent barriers, people work, not workers. Slaves. The distinction matters in ways the Empire's administrative language is designed to prevent from mattering. These are human beings, and not only human. He sees Twi'leks, sees Zabraks, sees a Mirialan woman whose head tattoos have been partially burned away, organized into production lines, building weapons that will be used to maintain the system that has organized them into production lines. He walks the length of the floor and does not stop, and does not speak to anyone and does not interfere with anything. But he feels it. Through the Force, which has been behaving strangely since Yavin, more present than it has been in years, more insistent, as if something in him that was suppressing the connection has loosened. He feels the weight of this room. Not the weights of individual lives, which would be unbearable in their specificity, the aggregate weight of it. The Force signature of collective suffering, which has a texture in the Force that is entirely distinct from any other texture, that you cannot mistake for anything else once you have felt it. He felt this over Alderaan. He felt it at a smaller scale in 100 places across 13 years of Imperial enforcement. He has never let himself feel it for longer than a second before redirecting. He lets it stay for 3 seconds. 4. Then the factory supervisor arrives, a man in the uniform of an Imperial supervisor, broad-faced and deferential, radiating the specific anxiety of someone whose operation is being inspected by the most dangerous man in the Empire, and the moment closes. Lord Vader, it is an honor to. Production capacity, Vader says. Current output versus maximum. Give me the numbers. The supervisor gives him the numbers. He listens to the numbers. He files the numbers. He makes decisions about the numbers that will be transmitted to the Imperial Armament Commission before the end of the day. And he walks back the length of the factory floor, and the people behind the transparent barriers do not look at him, because they have learned that looking at Imperial visitors is a behavior that invites consequences. And he walks out of the facility into the gray Simoon air. He stands on the landing platform and the gray sky sits on everything. The crack is not closing. He had thought, perhaps, that returning to function, to numbers, to logistics, to the machine work of Empire, would close it. This is what function has always done for him. This is the deal he made with himself 13 years ago, in the wreckage of everything, that if he kept moving, kept functioning, kept being the instrument he had agreed to become, the space inside the instrument would not matter, because the instrument does not have a space inside it. It is only an instrument. The deal, it appears, has terms he did not read closely enough. He stands on the platform and the gray sky sits on everything, and the white blade is not a thought he has had yet. It is not a decision, not a plan, not even a premonition. It is only the crack, getting wider, in a structure that was built on something that is no longer there. It gets wider. He breathes. The respirator breathes for him. Somewhere inside the suit, inside the man inside the suit, something that has been compressed for 13 years shifts, infinitesimally, toward the surface. Not yet, but it is moving. The Inquisitorious headquarters exists below the surface of Nur, not metaphorically, literally, built into the ocean floor of an aquatic moon in the Mustafar system, suspended between bedrock and crushing black water, accessible only by submarine transport or force-assisted descent through a sealed entry shaft. The Empire chose this location with the specific psychology of institutions that want their instruments to feel the weight of what they are. Every time an Inquisitor descends to headquarters, they descend. The architecture is the message. Vader arrives by shuttle, transfers to the submarine transport without ceremony, and descends. The facility receives him in the main assembly chamber, a circular room of black stone and harsh white lighting. The kind of lighting designed to eliminate shadow, which is architecturally counterintuitive for an organization that operates exclusively in shadow, but is psychologically precise for an organization that wants its members to feel permanently exposed. The Grand Inquisitor is dead. Vader killed him, not directly, but through the chain of events that his own incompetence initiated, which is a distinction the Grand Inquisitor had the poor judgment to make in Vader's presence approximately once. The position has not been formally refilled. In the Grand Inquisitor's absence, the remaining Inquisitors have organized themselves into a hierarchy of performance, each one demonstrating, in their interactions with Vader, the specific calibration of fear and ambition that they believe will protect them. It has not protected all of them. The ones currently standing in the assembly chamber are the ones who have so far achieved the correct calibration. There are 6 of them. The 5th brother stands at the front, large, heavy, wearing the red and black uniform with the particular stillness of someone who has decided that stillness reads as confidence. The 6th brother beside him, thinner, watchful. The 7th sister at the left edge of the group, her mask giving away nothing, her force presence doing what all their force presences do, broadcasting the dark side at a frequency that is, to Vader, approximately as impressive as a candle lit in a room he occupies. He stands before them and says nothing for long enough that the 5th brother's stillness begins to require active maintenance. The rebellion destroyed the Death Star, Vader says finally. You are aware. Yes, Lord Vader, the fifth brother says. You were not there. A pause. No, Lord Vader, you were here. He lets the word sit. While the Empire's greatest weapon was destroyed by a single rebel pilot in a single-seat fighter, you were here. The sixth brother opens his mouth. Vader looks at him and the mouth closes. I am not here to assign blame, Vader says, which is only partially true. The rebellion has demonstrated capability. The Imperial response requires assets that can locate and eliminate rebel leadership before they consolidate the victory at Yavin into a movement. He pauses. That is your function. I am here to assess whether you are capable of performing it. The seventh sister's masked head tilts slightly. An assessment. A test, Vader says. One of you will face me. Now, in this room. The assembly chamber goes very still. Not the stillness of the fifth brother's studied composure, genuine stillness, the kind that arrives when an entire room of people simultaneously recalculates their situation and finds the calculation unpleasant. Which one of us, the fifth brother says carefully, did you have in mind? You choose, Vader says. That is part of the test. They choose the sixth brother. It takes them 43 seconds to arrive at this decision through a process of glances and micro-expressions that Vader watches with the detached interest of someone observing a social dynamic they could influence but find more informative uninfluenced. The sixth brother is the second largest physically, the second most aggressive in his force presence. And Vader assesses, the one the others are most willing to spend. Not the least valuable. The least politically connected to the other's individual survival calculations. The sixth brother steps forward. He is not afraid, which is either genuine confidence or a more sophisticated fear response than Vader usually encounters in this building. He draws his double-bladed spinning lightsaber, the red blades deploying with the circular shriek of the Inquisitor weapon system, designed to intimidate through spectacle as much as threaten through function. Vader looks at the spinning red blades. He looks at his own lightsaber on his belt. He draws it. The red blade ignites with its characteristic hum, low, slightly unstable. The sound of a crystal that has been bled into compliance but not into contentment. He has heard this sound for 13 years, and has not, until 3 weeks ago, noticed the instability in it. He notices it now. The way you notice a sound you have been hearing so long it became background, and then something shifts in your attention, and suddenly, it is the only thing you can hear. He pushes the awareness back down. He raises the blade. The sixth brother attacks. He is good. Vader will acknowledge this, internally, because precision requires honesty, and honesty requires acknowledging capability in an opponent before dismantling it. The sixth brother is fast, genuinely fast, not performance fast, moving with the coiled efficiency of someone whose body has been trained past the point where thought precedes action. His form is a hybrid, adapted from Jarkai principles to accommodate the spinning double blade, generating angles of attack that a conventional lightsaber form struggles to track cleanly. He drives Vader back 3 steps in the first 4 seconds. The 5 remaining Inquisitors do not move. Their force presences, which Vader is monitoring as a secondary function, the way a competent general monitors his flanks while engaging the primary threat, shift, not to relief, to something more complicated. To the specific recalculation of people who have just watched the most powerful man they know get pushed back by someone they chose to spend. Vader stops moving backward. He does not change his stance. He does not increase his visible effort. He simply stops retreating, the way a wall stops retreating, and lets the sixth brother's next 2 strikes land against his blade with the full momentum the Inquisitor has built up, absorbing both without movement, and when the second strike deflects, he steps inside the guard. One hand on the sixth brother's weapon wrist. Force grip, clinical and total. The spinning blades freeze. The sixth brother strains against it for exactly 2 seconds, before he understands that straining is not a productive use of the 2 seconds he has left in this engagement. Your attack sequencing, Vader says, holding him at full extension, relies on generating momentum the opponent cannot absorb. You have trained against opponents who cannot absorb it. He releases the wrist. He steps back. Again, the sixth brother does not immediately attack. He is recalibrating. This is the correct response. which Vader acknowledges internally and does not acknowledge externally. The second exchange is different. The sixth brother abandons momentum generation and shifts to precision, shorter strikes, tighter angles, trying to find gaps in Vader's guard rather than overwhelm it. It is the right adaptation. Vader works against it with deliberate patience, letting the Inquisitor's blade get closer than he would allow in a situation with genuine stakes, reading the patterns, identifying the tell in the right shoulder that precedes the diagonal cross strike. He identifies it on the fourth repetition. On the fifth, when the shoulder moves, his blade is already where the sixth brother's blade is going, redirecting it downward, and the momentum carries the Inquisitor into a rotation that leaves his back to Vader for one clean second. Vader does not take the obvious move. He steps back instead. "Your tell," he says. Right shoulder drops before the diagonal. "Correct it." The sixth brother straightens. His breathing is controlled but working. "You stopped." "I am teaching," Vader says. "Not killing." There is a distinction. Today, he turns to the 5 watching Inquisitors. You are watching his footwork. Why are you watching his footwork? A statement, not a question. They understand this. The 5th brother, because his footwork is generating the shoulder drop. "Correct," Vader says. It is a consequence of his dominant side overextension on the forward lunge. He has compensated for it, at the strike level but not at the source. You have the same error in your own form. He looks at the 5th brother. You corrected it at the wrong level 3 years ago, and have been reinforcing the wrong correction since. I reviewed your training logs before arriving. The 5th brother's stillness becomes genuinely still rather than performed. All of you, Vader says, have errors I have reviewed. I will address each one. Beginning today. He deactivates his lightsaber. The red blade disappears. The room's lighting, without competition, seems harsher. The rebellion is locating sympathizer networks on 14 systems. I have the intelligence. You will be deployed in pairs, targeting leadership cells rather than foot soldiers. He pauses. The rebellion does not move without its leaders believing they have force protection. You will remove that belief. The 6th brother deactivates his own blade. He looks at Vader with an expression that is not quite respect and not quite fear, and exists in the specific space between them that Vader has learned, over 13 years, is the most functional place for a subordinate to occupy. You could have killed me, the 6th brother says. It is not a complaint. Yes, Vader says. Why didn't you? Vader looks at him for a moment. At all of them. At the assembly chamber with its harsh white lighting designed to eliminate shadow, and the black stone walls, and the weight of the ocean above pressing down on everything. Because dead Inquisitors do not improve, he says. And I need you to improve. He picks up his lightsaber. In his grip, through the worn metal of the hilt, he feels the crystal's instability the way you feel a pebble inside a shoe. Small, persistent, impossible to ignore once noticed. The red hum when it ignites has been wrong for weeks. Not malfunctioning. Wrong. As if the crystal is broadcasting something in a frequency he has been refusing to receive. He attaches the saber to his belt. He walks toward the exit. Behind him, he hears the Inquisitors begin to move. Not fleeing, not relaxing, but reorganizing. The way a group of people reorganize when they have been shown something they did not previously understand about their situation. He does not turn to observe it. The submarine transport is waiting. The ascent through black water takes 9 minutes. He stands in the transport bay and watches the depth gauge climb and thinks about the crystal in his lightsaber, which he has been refusing to think about for 3 weeks, which has been refusing to let him not think about it for 3 weeks. The water outside the viewport lightens as they rise, black to deep gray to the silver of Nur's ocean surface. And then they break through into the Mustafar system's dim light, and the hum of the crystal is still there, wrong in the way it has always been wrong, but audible now in a way it never was, and he puts his hand on the hilt and holds it there without igniting it. The crystal pushes back. Not hard, not violently, like a small, persistent hand pressing from the other side of a wall. He releases the hilt. He sits in the transport bay as the submarine converts to atmospheric flight, and the ocean of Nur drops away beneath him, And somewhere in the machinery of the suit, in the dark where nothing is allowed to be, something shifts another degree toward the surface. Not yet, but closer. The rebel fleet does not stay anywhere long enough to become a place. This is doctrine, not accident. The strategic principle that has kept the Alliance alive against an empire with 10,000 times its resources is the principle of non-location, of existing as a presence rather than a position, of being something the empire has to chase rather than something it can find and hold. The fleet moves in coordinated fragments, each fragment running a different hyperspace route on a different schedule, reassembling at rendezvous coordinates that change on a rotation no single ship's crew knows completely. If any one vessel is captured, its crew cannot give up the fleet's location. They do not have it. Luke Skywalker has been part of this fleet for 6 weeks and has not slept a full night in any of them. This is not distress exactly. It is the specific condition of someone whose life has changed so completely and so rapidly that the nervous system has not yet finished processing the change, and until it finishes, sleep feels like a door the body is not yet willing to close. He lies in his bunk aboard the Redemption, a medical frigate that has been temporarily hosting Rogue Squadron while the Alliance consolidates post-Yavin, and he stares at the curved gray ceiling and catalogues the things that are different now. Moisture Farm. Gone, Uncle Owen. Gone, Aunt Beru. Gone, Ben. Gone, Tatooine as a home to return to. Gone. He does not run this list in grief exactly. He runs it the way you run inventory, not because you want to think about what is missing, but because the mind insists on accounting before it can move forward. He runs it until the accounting is complete. Then he lies there in the completed accounting and breathes. And eventually the force hum of the ship's engines becomes something his nervous system accepts as constant. And he sleeps. For approximately 4 hours, and wakes before the alarm and goes to the hangar to do pre-flight checks on his X-Wing that do not need doing. This is his life now. He is beginning to understand its shape. Leia finds him in the hangar at an hour when the Redemption's lights are still at night cycle, which means she has not been sleeping either. Which is something he has noticed about her, that she operates on a schedule that is determined by what needs doing rather than by what a human body requires, and that she has apparently been doing this long enough that her body has accepted the arrangement. She carries 2 cups of whatever passes for calf on a medical frigate, which turns out to be something with the color of calf and approximately 1/3 of its other qualities, and she hands him one without asking if he wants it, which he appreciates. They stand at the nose of his X-Wing in the half-dark hangar and drink the not-quite calf, and don't talk for a while, which is another thing he has learned about her. That she is one of the few people he has encountered who treats silence as a legitimate conversational position, rather than a gap to be filled. "You've been doing extra simulation hours," she says eventually. "The targeting system on the trench run." He stops. Starts again. "There was a moment where I wasn't using the computer. At all. And I made the shot." He turns the cup in his hands. "I can't replicate it in simulation. Because in simulation, you know it's simulation. I knew it was real in the trench, and I still couldn't." He stops again. "Ben told me to use the Force. Right before the shot. I heard him, and I turned off the computer, and I made the shot, and I genuinely could not tell you what I did differently." Leia looks at him with the specific expression she uses when she is taking something seriously that she has not yet decided how to categorize. Can you feel it? The Force. In general, not just in a targeting solution. He thinks about this honestly. It's like hearing a frequency that's always been there. That I didn't know I was hearing until someone told me I was hearing it. And now I can't not hear it. But I don't know how to listen to it, if that makes sense. "It doesn't," she says. "But I believe you." He looks at her. "Do you?" He doesn't know how to finish this question without it sounding like something it isn't, so he tries a different approach. "Sometimes I feel like I'm picking up things about people. Not thoughts. More like weather. Like there's weather around people that I can feel if I pay attention." Her expression does something complicated. Not alarm. Not disbelief. Something between recognition and reluctance. the face of someone who has encountered something they have been not thinking about for a long time. "What kind of weather?" she says carefully. "Warmth," he says. "Mostly warmth. From people who..." He shakes his head. "I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about." She drinks her not-quite-calf. "Get some sleep," she says, which is not an answer to what he asked, and they both know it. She goes. He watches her walk the length of the hangar, and in the Force, which is always on now, always present, the frequency he cannot stop hearing. Her presence is warm and structured and carrying something that feels, when he reaches toward it without meaning to, like looking in a mirror and finding the reflection is slightly older than you expected. He doesn't know what that means. He does the pre-flight checks that don't need doing. 3 systems away, on a Star Destroyer running without its full transponder signal in a navigational gray zone between 2 sector boundaries, Vader receives a report. The agent's name is not in the report, because agents' names are never in reports. There is a code designation, a planet designation, Ord Mantell, and a contact description. The Alliance has a support network on Ord Mantell. Civilians, mostly. People who run supply chains and communications relays and safe houses, not soldiers, but the infrastructure that makes soldiers possible. The report names the contact, a merchant family, 3 generations in the same import business, the oldest daughter apparently running a frequency scrambler out of a back storage room. Standard intelligence. Standard targets. He has acted on reports like this 800 times. He reads the Ord Mantell report and files it for Inquisitor deployment. Then, he reads the second report. This one has no planet designation. It has a sensor signature, a passive scan anomaly logged by an Imperial probe droid operating on the edge of the Outer Rim, in a navigational corridor that is one of 40 possible routes the Rebel fleet uses for transit. The anomaly is subtle, a gravitational microdistortion consistent with a large number of ships dropping in and out of hyperspace, in the same corridor over a compressed time window. It is the kind of signal that means nothing in isolation and everything in context, and the probe droid's analysis algorithm did not flag it as significant because the algorithm does not have context. Vader has context. He sits with the sensor data for 11 minutes, which is longer than he usually sits with anything, cross-referencing it against what he knows about Alliance fleet movement doctrine, which is more than the Alliance is aware he knows, because he has spent 6 weeks not knowing where they are, but understanding precisely how they are not being somewhere. And those are different forms of knowledge, and the second one is more useful. The navigational corridor in the probe droid's report connects to 3 viable rendezvous zones. He eliminates one immediately, too close to an inhabited system the Alliance would avoid for operational security. The second requires a hyperspace approach that passes through a known Imperial patrol corridor, which the Alliance avoids with consistency bordering on doctrine. The third is a deep space coordinate set in a system with no name, no habitation, no strategic value, except as a point in space that ships can reach from multiple directions without passing through Imperial monitoring. He looks at the coordinate set for a long time. He does not order a fleet deployment to those coordinates. Not yet. The data is not sufficient for certainty, and certainty matters, not for moral reasons, not because he is weighing costs, but because an incorrect deployment reveals his analytical capability to the Alliance and loses the intelligence advantage. He does not spend intelligence advantages on insufficient certainties. He files the coordinates under a personal cipher that only routes to his private terminal. Then he sits in the intelligence center of a Star Destroyer running dark between 2 sector boundaries and does not move, and the officers around him process their data and transmit their reports and do not look at him, because they have all learned, at various stages of their careers, that looking at him is a habit with a consistently low reward-to-risk ratio. He is thinking about the pilot in the trench. He is always thinking about the pilot in the trench, below the surface of whatever else he is thinking about, the way a structural fault runs below the surface of a wall, invisible in normal operation, present in every calculation, fundamental to the integrity of the load-bearing system, whether acknowledged or not. He has the coordinates of what may be the Rebel fleet's transit corridor. He has a probe droid report suggesting a rendezvous point. He has an intelligence network on 14 systems identifying rebel sympathizer cells. He has every tool he has spent 6 weeks assembling for exactly this purpose: finding the rebellion, dismantling it, eliminating the threat it poses to an empire that he serves, because serving it is the only remaining function that has kept the machinery of him operational since Mustafar. He has all of this. He sits in the dark center of a running dark star destroyer, and his hand rests on the table beside the intelligence terminal, and does not move toward the controls that would initiate deployment. And the reason it does not move is the reason he has been not examining for 6 weeks. And the reason is a force signature, in a trench that was bright and clean and vast, and so devastatingly specific in its texture that his hand tightened on the control column without his permission, and he did not take the shot. The hand does not move. He reaches instead for the lightsaber. He does not draw it. He rests his hand on the hilt, through the worn grip, and feels the crystal's persistent wrongness. The hum that has been wrong since Yavin, that has been wrong since he started hearing it. That is not malfunction and not damage, but something else. Something he does not have a word for that lives on the other side of a wall he has been pressing his palm against for weeks. The crystal pushes back, small and persistent and patient, as if it has been waiting for 13 years, and is not concerned about waiting a little longer. He releases the hilt. He looks at the coordinates on the terminal. He does not move. Mustafar is not a planet that forgives visits. It receives them the way it receives everything, with indifference, with heat, with the geological patience of a world that has been destroying things for longer than the things it destroys have existed. The lava flows do not accelerate for arriving shuttles. The volcanic atmosphere does not moderate its particulate density for landing sensors. The ground itself, where it is ground and not liquid rock, is black and jagged and uncomfortable in the specific way of surfaces that were never shaped by anything other than violence. Vader's castle rises from a ridge above the Gahen Plains, black spire, ancient design. Built on a vergence in the Force that predates the castle by thousands of years, that predates the Sith by longer, that has been a site of dark side concentration since before the civilization that built the original structure had a word for the dark side. He chose this location deliberately. Years ago. He comes here when he needs to be somewhere that Palpatine's presence does not reach, which is not a thought he has ever examined closely, because examining it would require acknowledging what it means to need to be somewhere Palpatine does not reach. The shuttle sets down on the castle's landing platform. The heat is immediate. Not the heat of a warm climate, but the heat of a place that is genuinely trying to cook things. That has been cooking things since before anyone arrived to be cooked. He walks from the platform into the castle's interior without hurrying, because hurrying on Mustafar is a philosophical error. Nothing on Mustafar responds to urgency, only to endurance. The castle is empty. He keeps no permanent staff here. There are systems, environmental controls, security monitoring, the ancient mechanisms of the Vergent structure that run on something older than electricity, but no people. He is here alone, which is the only way this place functions as what he needs it to be. He goes to the meditation chamber. The chamber is at the castle's center, below ground level, where the Vergence is strongest. The floor is smooth black stone that stays cooler than it should, given the geological reality 3 meters below it. And the walls curve upward in the shape of a space that was designed for a specific kind of interior work, not prayer, not exactly. Not the Jedi meditation he once practiced in the temple's upper levels, but the Sith version of the same fundamental act, turning inward, finding the dark source, feeding it and being fed. He has used this chamber over 6 years of occasional visits to sustain the dark side connection that the suit requires. The suit runs on pain, and the Vergence amplifies it, takes the constant low-level suffering of existing inside a machine that breathes for him, walks for him, filters the air he would otherwise choke on, and magnifies it into a usable channel. He comes here when the channel needs clearing, when the connection has become bureaucratic rather than genuine and needs renewal at the source. He sits in the chamber now, in the posture he has always used, and reaches for the dark. It is there. It is always there. The Vergence does not care about his current condition. It is not responding to him. It is simply present, the way the lava flows are present, patient and indifferent and enormous. He reaches for it the way he always reaches for it, and it opens the way it always opens. But something is different. The channel, the connection between himself and the dark side that he has maintained for 13 years, with the consistency of a practitioner who understands that force connection is a discipline requiring daily practice. The channel is narrower than it was 6 weeks ago. Not broken, not damaged. Narrower, as if something in him has been, without his authorization, rerouting. He sits with this for a long time. The virgence pulses around him. Heat comes up through the stone in slow waves. The castle's ancient mechanisms run their quiet cycles in the walls. He reaches for the dark side connection, and it is there, and it is functional, and it has been with him for 13 years, and it is narrower than it was, and he does not know what is on the other side of where it used to be, what has moved into the space the narrowing has created. He stays in the chamber for 4 hours. He does not find the answer. He finds, instead, something he has not found in this chamber before, a silence that is not the silence of the dark side, which is a cold and pressurized silence. The silence of compression, of grief converted to power. This silence is different. It is the silence of something that has been waiting for the noise to stop. He leaves the chamber without resolution, which has never happened here before. The castle's upper levels have windows. He does not use them. There is nothing to see through them except Mustafar, which is not a view that offers anything except geological confirmation that some situations cannot be undone. But tonight, for reasons he does not examine, he goes to the highest window level and stands at the viewport, and looks out. The Gehen plains spread below in slow rivers of orange and red, moving with the patient indifference of things that have been moving since before anything alive was watching. The sky above them is dark and particulate. Mustafar's atmosphere holds volcanic ash at altitude, the way other planets hold clouds. And the light that comes through it at night is diffuse and reddish, and comes from the planet itself rather than from any star. Mustafar makes its own light. It does not need anything from outside. He stands at the window and reaches for his lightsaber, and draws it, not igniting it, just holding it, turning it in his gauntleted hand. The hilt is worn at the grip, 13 years of use, the grip reshaped by the exact pressure pattern of his specific hand, the way tool handles reshape to their users over time. He knows this hilt the way he knows the suit, completely, without reference to anything it was before he made it his. He ignites it. The red blade fills the dark room with its characteristic light, unstable at the edges. The slight flicker of a crystal that produces power despite itself, that was never willing and has been compliant for 13 years and is not willing now in some way that has become impossible to ignore. He holds the blade at eye level. The red light hits the viewport glass and comes back at him, and he watches his own reflection in the glass. The black mask, the red blade, the dark room, and for the first time in a very long time he sees this image from outside itself. This is what he looks like. He has not thought about what he looks like since he stopped being able to see his own face. The suit does not have a mirror function. He knows what Darth Vader looks like because the galaxy knows what Darth Vader looks like. It is a known variable. A symbol that functions independently of the man inside it, and the man inside it has not been the relevant unit of analysis for 13 years. He looks at the reflection and the red blade flickers, and in the Virgence's slow pulse he feels the crystal's resistance. Not the push he has been feeling for weeks, the small persistent hand against the wall, but something larger, something that has been building behind the push. The crystal is not malfunctioning. The crystal is trying to tell him something, which is a thing that crystals do not do, except that they do. Except that this is established in the foundational texts of both Jedi and Sith practice, that kyber crystals are semi-sentient, that they communicate through the Force in the language of resonance and dissonance, and his crystal has been producing dissonance for 6 weeks, in a register he has been refusing to hear. He hears it now. He lets himself hear it now. In this room, on this planet, in this virgence that amplifies everything, and what he hears is not words. It is not vision. It is the shape of a grief, his grief, given back to him from the outside, held in the crystal for 13 years, preserved there in the act of bleeding, in the act of pouring his suffering into it to corrupt it. The crystal took his grief and became red. It has been holding his grief ever since, and it is giving it back now, pressing it back through the hilt into his hand, and he cannot not feel it, because he is in a vergence on Mustafar holding an ignited lightsaber, and there is nothing else in this room except him and the grief and the crystal. Adam. The word arrives the way truths arrive, when you have been refusing them, complete and sudden and requiring nothing from you except acknowledgement. Not a memory, not a vision, the word itself, the name itself, with all its weight intact. 23 years of weight. The weight of a woman who died believing he had betrayed her, which he had, which he did, which is not a thing that can be undone by 13 years of function, or dark side discipline, or the geological patience of a planet that destroys things slowly. He stands at the window of his castle, on a planet that makes its own light, and the red blade of his lightsaber flickers, and the crystal presses its grief back through the hilt into his hand. And he closes his eyes. He does not cry. The suit does not allow crying. The mechanisms that would require it, the tear ducts, the facial muscles, the biological release of grief through physical expression, are inaccessible. He is a man in a machine, and the machine does not have a grief function, and the grief has to go somewhere, and it goes into the crystal, and the crystal has been holding it, and the crystal is full. He stands there for a long time. When he opens his eyes, the red blade is still red. Nothing has changed in the visible spectrum. Everything has changed in the other one. He deactivates the lightsaber. He stands at the window for another minute, looking at the plains below, the slow orange rivers, the dark sky, the diffuse light of a planet that does not require the sun to see itself. He makes a decision that he does not make consciously, that his body makes before his mind catches up to it. The way bodies make decisions that have been true for weeks, before the mind is willing to process them. He will go to Obi-Wan. Not to fight, not to capture. Not for any of the reasons the Empire would understand, or that Palpatine would sanction, or that Darth Vader, as a functional instrument of the Imperial will, would be able to justify in any report to any superior. He will go because there is something in the crystal that has been waiting 13 years to be put down, and he cannot put it down alone, and there is only one person in the galaxy who was there at the beginning, who knows what was lost, who is the only one who might, understand what it means to stand in a dark room on a burning planet and hear a crystal full of grief pressing it back into your hands. He attaches the lightsaber to his belt. He goes to the landing platform. Mustafar receives his departure the way it receives everything. The transmission arrives before he reaches orbit. He is still in the shuttle's ascent burn, Mustafar's gravitational pull releasing him in increments, the volcanic atmosphere thinning from orange-black to dark gray to the clean nothing of space. When the priority channel opens on the cockpit console with the specific alert tone that has only one sender, not the Imperial emergency frequency, not the Star Destroyer relay, the direct channel, the nerve. He accepts it without altering his course. Palpatine's face resolves in the blue holographic light of the cockpit display. Aged, hooded, the yellow eyes that are always slightly more present than the situation seems to require, as if he is simultaneously in the room and watching the room from somewhere else. He looks, as he always looks, like a man who arrived at this moment before you did, and has been waiting with patience he finds privately amusing. "Lord Vader," he says, "you are leaving Mustafar. Not a question." He knows. He always knows, which is a thing Vader has understood for 13 years and has never examined the full implications of, because the full implications, examined completely, led somewhere Vader has needed to not go. "I was preparing to contact you, my master," Vader says, which is true in the sense that he would have contacted Palpatine before arriving at Tatooine, if not in the sense that the contact was imminent. "Of course you were." The yellow eyes hold something that is not quite warmth and not quite its opposite. The performance of affection, practiced enough that it has its own texture, distinct from actual affection in ways that Vader has known for years and has never said. "Come to Coruscant. There are matters requiring our attention. I have intelligence on the rebel fleet's transit corridor. I was preparing to. The rebellion can wait 3 days, Lord Vader. A pause precisely calibrated to feel like generosity rather than command. Come to Coruscant. I have something to show you. The channel closes. Vader sits in the cockpit of an ascending shuttle above a planet that destroys things slowly. And the course he was not yet flying to Tatooine becomes, instead, a course to Coruscant, because there is no version of that call in which the course is anything else. He sets the navigation. Coruscant from above looks like a machine dreaming of being a planet. The city surface catches light at 1,000 different angles, towers and landing platforms and transit lines, and the deep canyon streets between structures that have been built, demolished, and rebuilt so many times that the lowest levels exist in permanent darkness, which is an architectural history of the Empire written in its most honest language. The planet cannot feed itself. It cannot water itself. Everything it requires comes from somewhere else, which is the central fact of the imperial capital, and which nobody discusses, because it is also the central fact of the Empire. He lands in the private imperial palace bay that is his alone to use. And the bay is empty of staff when he arrives, which means Palpatine wanted the bay empty, which means this meeting begins before the meeting begins. He walks to the throne room through corridors that clear ahead of him, guards stepping aside, functionaries redirecting, the specific parting of bodies that accompanies his passage through any imperial facility. He has been walking through corridors that clear for 13 years. He no longer notices the individual acts of clearing. He notices today only that the corridor to the throne room is longer than it has ever been, that each step toward Palpatine is a step away from a shuttle and a course, and a decision his body made on a burning planet 2 hours ago. The throne room doors open. Palpatine is not on his throne. This is the first deviation from the established pattern. He is standing at the throne room's viewport, hands folded behind his back, looking at Coruscant's surface below. It is a posture Vader has seen him use before, specifically in situations where Palpatine wants to appear to be thinking about something larger than the conversation he is about to have. "You came quickly," Palpatine says without turning. "You indicated urgency. I indicated importance. They are not the same thing." He turns now, and his face in the viewport light is all angles and shadow, the yellow eyes catching the city glow. "But you came quickly nonetheless. You were eager to leave Mustafar. I had completed what I went there to do." "And what did you go there to do?" Vader looks at him across the throne room's considerable distance. Meditate. Palpatine moves away from the viewport with the unhurried drift of very old things that have learned efficiency of motion from the inside out. No wasted movement. Nothing demonstrative. Pure economy. He passes the throne without sitting in it and comes to stand at the center of the room, which is a choice about geometry that Vader reads immediately. The center of the room is equidistant from all exits and all positions. It is the location of maximum option. "You have been different," Palpatine says, "since the Death Star." Vader does not respond. Quieter in the Force. The yellow eyes hold him. "I have monitored your signal for 13 years, Lord Vader. I know its texture the way I know my own. Since Yavin, there has been a quality, a dampening." He tilts his head slightly, as if something is absorbing signal that previously radiated. "The meditation practices I have been developing are not responsible for what I am sensing." The voice does not change. It never changes. That is part of what makes it what it is. The total consistency of a man who does not need to modulate, because his fundamental position never changes. "I want to show you something." He moves to a secondary console at the room's edge and activates a holographic display. It resolves into a star map, outer rim, a specific sector, a specific system. Tatooine. Vader looks at the star map and does not move. "We have intelligence," Palpatine says, suggesting that Obi-Wan Kenobi is alive. The throne room is very large. Vader is aware of this with unusual specificity, the distance between where he stands and where Palpatine stands, the location of the doors, the guards in their alcoves who are present but not attending, the window and the city below it. He is aware of all of this in the automatic threat mapping function of a mind that has spent 2 decades in situations where physical geometry matters. "The intelligence," Vader says, "is not new." "No," Palpatine agrees. We have suspected for some time. But we have avoided acting on the suspicion because acting requires resources and generates exposure. And Kenobi in hiding is less dangerous than Kenobi made aware that we are looking. He pauses. That calculus has changed. How? Because you were in that trench at Yavin, Palpatine says, and the pilot who made the shot is force-sensitive. Which means Kenobi has been training someone. Which means he has not been simply hiding. He has been preparing. Vader looks at the star map. At Tatooine, rendered in small blue light in the center of the display. I will go, he says. You will not, Palpatine says. And the pleasantness in his voice is the pleasantness of a man who has already decided this and is informing rather than discussing. You are too known. Your approach to Tatooine in any configuration would be detected before you arrived. We will send the Inquisitors. The throne room's silence is the specific silence of a decision being presented as collaborative that was never collaborative. The Inquisitors, Vader says, are not capable of killing Obi-Wan Kenobi? No. Palpatine turns back to the display. But they are capable of flushing him, of making his position untenable, of forcing him to move. A man who moves can be tracked. A man who moves with a young force-sensitive student moves in ways that create patterns. He looks at Vader. We do not need the Inquisitors to succeed. We need them to push. Vader looks at the map. Tatooine, a moisture farm on the edge of the galaxy, where a teenage boy comes out at sunset to watch the twin suns go down, because even on the edge of the galaxy beauty still happens and the young still seek it. He has not seen this. He does not know this. He knows only a force signature in a trench, and a coordinate set in a probe droid report, and the specific texture of something bright and clean and vast that his hand tightened toward without permission. And when Kenobi moves, Vader says, who tracks him? You do, Palpatine says simply. When he surfaces, you will be ready. It is a better approach than a direct strike. More information, more control, more certainty. He deactivates the holographic display. The Inquisitors deploy in 4 days. You will coordinate their operation from the Executor. The Executor. His flagship, currently in dry dock above Quat following the post-Yavin fleet restructuring. The largest star destroyer ever commissioned. The instrument Palpatine gave him specifically to make the point that his reach now extends in all directions simultaneously. 4 days, Vader says. Is that insufficient? Vader looks at the space where the star map was, at the blank air where Tatooine glowed in small blue light. No, he says. 4 days is sufficient. It is not sufficient. 3 days was not sufficient when he had it. 4 days is the same number seen from a different angle, which is not a different number. Good. Palpatine moves back toward the viewport, which is the gesture that means the audience is concluding. There is one other matter. Vader waits. The pilot at Yavin, Palpatine says, looking at Coruscant below. The one who made the shot. Our intelligence has a name. The throne room's temperature does not change. The light does not change. Nothing visible changes. Skywalker, Palpatine says. Luke Skywalker. A boy from Tatooine. He pauses, letting this sit in the room. Curious name. Vader looks at the back of his master's hooded head. At the hands folded behind it, the posture of a man watching a city he owns from a height he has always occupied. Curious, Vader says. His voice comes from the vocoder flat and absolute, the way a wall is flat and absolute. It gives away nothing. It is the voice of a machine, which is what it has always been, which is what Palpatine built it to be, which is what Palpatine is now listening to for the specific frequency of something other than machine. Vader does not give him the frequency. I will coordinate from the Executor, he says, as you have directed. Excellent. The yellow eyes do not turn back. You may go, Lord Vader. He goes. In the corridor outside the throne room, alone for 11 seconds before the next junction brings staff and guards back into proximity, Vader stops. Luke Skywalker. Not a frequency in a trench. Not a force signature with a texture he recognized and refused to name. A name. A real name attached to a real person on a real planet. around which Inquisitors will be deployed in 4 days to flush out his former master, and, incidentally, expose the boy to every threat the Inquisitorius can generate. He stands in the corridor for 11 seconds. Then he walks. He does not walk toward the private bay where his shuttle is docked. He walks toward the secondary communications center on the palace's administrative level, which has encryption protocols that do not route through Palpatine's monitoring systems, because Vader built those protocols himself 8 years ago and has never mentioned them to anyone. He has a transmission to send. It cannot wait 4 days. Obi-Wan Kenobi receives the transmission at 3 in the morning, desert time. He has been awake. This is not unusual. Sleep on Tatooine has never come easily to him, not in 19 years of trying. Not because the desert is uncomfortable, though it is, but because sleeping deeply requires a relationship with the present moment that he has never fully negotiated. He lies on his bunk in the small house and listens to the sand shifting against the exterior walls and maintains the specific wakefulness of someone who has trained himself to rest without fully surrendering. Because fully surrendering, on Tatooine, has never felt like something the situation permits. The transmission alert is a single encrypted pulse on a frequency he has not heard in 19 years. He sits up. He crosses the room to the communications terminal in 4 steps. The encryption key the pulse carries is one he generated himself, in another life, for another purpose, a Jedi Order emergency protocol, master to Padawan. The kind of channel that was supposed to survive catastrophe so that Jedi separated by disaster could find each other. He built this key with Anakin in the 3rd year of the Clone Wars, sitting in a hangar on Coruscant at 2 in the morning arguing about the mathematics of encryption, while Anakin complained that the mathematics were unnecessarily complex, and Obi-Wan explained, patiently, that the complexity was the point. Anakin remembered the key. He opens the channel. There is no visual, audio only. A voice modulator running under the vocoder's characteristic timbre, stripping the mechanical resonance, and leaving something beneath it that is almost human, almost familiar, almost the voice of someone he knew before everything. 7 words. The Inquisitors deploy in 4 days. Then, get the boy off Tatooine. Then nothing. The channel closes. The frequency goes dark and stays dark, and Obi-Wan sits at the terminal in the pre-dawn desert silence and puts his hands flat on the table and breathes. He does not spend time on disbelief. Disbelief is a luxury for people who have not spent 19 years on a desert planet watching a boy grow up and feeling, in the Force, the specific texture of a darkness on the other side of the galaxy that he has never fully been able to stop sensing, because it is the texture of someone he trained for a decade, and the Force does not forget connections regardless of what the people in them become. He knows the channel, he knows the key, he knows what 4 days means and what the Inquisitorius is, and what flushing means in the operational language of Imperial intelligence. He spends 30 seconds on the mathematics of the situation. Then he goes to the storage chest under his bunk and removes the lightsaber he has not ignited in 19 years. He holds it. He does not ignite it. He turns it in his hands in the dark, feeling the weight of it. The specific balance of a weapon built for a body that was younger and faster and operating under a completely different set of assumptions about what the next decade would look like. He puts it in his belt. Then he goes to find Owen Lars. Owen Lars does not want to hear it. This is not a surprise. Owen Lars has not wanted to hear anything from Obi-Wan Kenobi for 19 years, which is a position Obi-Wan understands completely. Owen's objections are not irrational. They are not born of ignorance. They are the objections of a man who has been raising someone else's child on the edge of the galaxy, under the agreement that the child would have a normal life. And every time Obi-Wan appears, it is a renegotiation of that agreement in a direction Owen did not want to go. He appears at the homestead door before dawn, and Owen opens it with the expression of a man who has been half expecting this and fully dreading it. "How long," Owen says, before Obi-Wan speaks. 4 days. Possibly less. Owen looks at him for a long moment. Behind him, through the homestead's interior, the sounds of an early morning, Beru moving in the kitchen, the distant whir of the vaporators cycling, the ordinary sounds of a life that is about to become something else. "He's not ready," Owen says. "He doesn't need to be ready." Obi-Wan says, "He needs to be somewhere else." "Where?" "I'm working on that." Owen's jaw tightens in the specific way of a man who has been making peace with a situation he cannot control for 2 decades, and has just been informed that the situation is accelerating. You said we'd have time. We had time. The time is done. A long pause. The vaporators cycle. Somewhere inside, Beru has gone quiet in the manner of someone who is listening through a doorway. I'll tell him in the morning, Owen says. Tell him now, Obi-Wan says. Give him the morning to say goodbye to this place. He'll need it. Owen looks at him with the exhausted resignation of a man who has known this moment was coming and has never found a way to prepare for it that would actually constitute preparation. Then he steps back from the door, and Obi-Wan steps inside. And the homestead receives them both in its ordinary light. Luke takes it the way he takes most things, with a stillness that sits on top of a great deal of movement that is happening below the surface, processing rapidly in a place where it doesn't show. He sits at the homestead table and listens to Owen explain, with the halting directness of a man who has never found a comfortable way to have this conversation because he has been avoiding it for 16 years, that there are people coming, that Luke needs to leave Tatooine, that this is not a choice. Luke looks at Obi-Wan across the table. The Force, he says. Not a question. Yes, Obi-Wan says. Someone found out. Someone told us. There's a difference. He pauses. Not everyone in the dark knows only how to be dark. Luke processes this. His Force presence, which Obi-Wan can feel with the clarity of proximity, bright and vast and running at a frequency that still, after 16 years of watching it develop from a careful distance, produces something in Obi-Wan's chest that is not quite grief and not quite pride, but contains elements of both, sharpened slightly. Focusing, the way it focuses when something has his complete attention. Who told us? Luke says. Someone who owes you a great deal, Obi-Wan says, and is attempting to begin paying it in the only currency currently available. Luke looks at him for a long moment with the expression of a young man who is intelligent enough to know that this answer is an answer-shaped object rather than an actual answer, and who has decided to accept it because the situation does not permit the time the actual answer would require. Where do we go, he says. They leave before dawn. Luke takes very little. This surprises Obi-Wan. He expected the hesitation of someone leaving the only home they've known, the collecting of objects that stand in for the life being left behind. Luke moves through the homestead with the efficiency of someone who has already, at some level below conscious decision, been saying goodbye to this place for longer than today. He takes a bag. He takes the things that are his. He stands in the doorway of his room for exactly 4 seconds, and then turns and goes to the speeder. Beru hugs him at the homestead entrance in the way of someone who has loved a child completely and is releasing them with both hands, because releasing them is the loving thing. She does not cry, because Beru Lars is not a woman who cries in front of people if she can help it. Her eyes do something instead, and Luke sees it, and he holds on for an extra second, and then he gets in the speeder. Owen shakes Obi-Wan's hand. He has never done this before. His grip is the grip of a farmer, strong and dry and without performance. Keep him alive, Owen says. That, Obi-Wan says, I intend to do. They reach Mos Eisley as the first sun breaks the horizon, and Obi-Wan secures passage on a vessel that asks no questions in exchange for a fare that answers all of them. He does not tell Luke where they are going yet, because where they are going depends on a calculation he has not finished, and the calculation has a variable in it that he is still working out. The variable is the transmission, not the content. The content is clear. The content is actionable. He has acted on it. The variable is the sender. The variable is what it means that the sender sent it. What it costs someone operating under the conditions the sender operates under to use a 19-year-old encryption key on a channel that goes only one place. To say 7 words that carry within them an acknowledgement of everything those 7 words imply. He sits in the cantina booth waiting for their departure window and turns this variable over in his mind the way he turns difficult problems. Not forcing it, not demanding resolution, but presenting it to the part of his mind that works below the surface and waiting for what comes up. What comes up is this. The transmission was not a strategic calculation. Vader sends strategic calculations through official channels, through the Inquisitorius, Through the vast imperial machinery he operates as an extension of his will. The transmission was 7 words on a private channel at 3 in the morning. It was not strategy. It was something older than strategy, something that operates below the machinery and occasionally, under sufficient pressure, surfaces through it. Luke slides into the booth across from him carrying 2 cups of something. He sets one in front of Obi-Wan. "You have that face," Luke says. "Which face? The one that means you're thinking about something you're not going to tell me yet." Obi-Wan looks at him. This boy who has his father's eyes and his mother's precision, and some third quality that belongs only to itself, to whatever Anakin Skywalker and Padma Amidala produced when they produced a person. He looks at Luke and thinks about 7 words at 3 in the morning, on a channel that goes only one place. "I'm thinking," Obi-Wan says carefully, "about the nature of debt, and what it looks like when someone begins to pay one they've been carrying a long time." Luke looks at him with the expression of someone filing an answer-shaped object alongside the previous one, building a collection of them, patient enough to wait for the actual answers to arrive. "Does this have something to do with where we're going?" Luke says. "Eventually," Obi-Wan says. "Everything does." On the Executor, in the Flag Admiral's private communications bay, Vader stands before a blank screen where Coruscant was 30 minutes ago and does not move for a long time. He has sent the transmission. The transmission cannot be unsent. The channel is dark and will stay dark, and somewhere on Tatooine a man he has not spoken to in 19 years is doing whatever that man does with information that arrives from impossible directions at 3 in the morning. What Vader has done is not a small thing. He is aware of this with the clarity of someone who has not done it yet, but can already feel the weight of having done it. The forward time sensation of an action whose consequences have already been determined by the nature of the action, not by any future event. He has sent the transmission. He has told Obi-Wan. He has warned the boy. He reaches for his lightsaber. Not as a weapon. He holds it in both hands, something he never does. Both hands, the way you hold something fragile or precious. The way you hold something you are finally willing to look at directly. The crystal's pressure is constant now. Not building. It reached its maximum pressure weeks ago. It has been waiting. He closes his eyes. He does not pour anything into it. He does not try to control what happens. He simply opens. The way you open a door you have been standing against for a long time. Not falling through it. Opening it. The grief arrives. All of it. 13 years of it, compressed into the crystal and held there, returning now through the hilt in both directions simultaneously, filling him and leaving him at the same time. The way floods both bring and take. Padme, his mother. The temple. The children in the temple whose forced signatures he can still feel if he allows himself to feel them, which he has not allowed himself to feel in 13 years. The moment on the Mustafar bank when he understood what he had done and the understanding arrived, approximately 4 seconds, too late. He holds all of it. He does not redirect it. He does not compress it. He holds it the way you hold a wound that has been sealed wrong, knowing that the cleaning will hurt more than the sealing did, knowing that it must. The lightsaber grows warm in his hands, then hot. Then it becomes too bright to look at directly, even through closed eyes, a white light pressing through his eyelids, filling the room, filling the ship around the room, radiating outward in a pulse that every force sensitive within 3 systems will feel as a soundless bell struck once and held. The red is gone. When he opens his eyes, the blade in his hands is white. Pure white. Not the red of corruption converted to energy, not the blue of Jedi training. White. The color of something that has been through the fire and come out the other side, not unburned but clean. The color of a crystal that has carried grief for 13 years and has finally, completely, been allowed to put it down. He looks at the white blade in the communications bay of the Executor, alone, and the sound it makes is not the unstable flicker of a bled crystal. It is a single clear tone, deep and resonant, holding steady. Darth Vader looks at the white blade and breathes. The respirator breathes for him. The sound of it fills the room. The mechanical inhale, the mechanical exhale. The machine that has been his lungs for 13 years, steady and indifferent and constant as the lava flows on Mustafar. But something underneath it, something that has not been audible in 13 years, below the respirator's rhythm, beneath the machinery. His heartbeat. He can hear his own heartbeat. He has not been able to hear it since Mustafar. Palpatine feels it the moment it happens. He is in his private meditation alcove at the apex of the Imperial Palace, a chamber no staff enters, no guard monitors, a space that exists for one purpose, and performs that purpose in total isolation from every other system in the building. He sits in the dark, and communes with the dark side the way he has communed with it for 80 years, feeding it, and being fed. And the connection is so deep and so practiced that it functions less like meditation and more like breathing, automatic, constant, the fundamental exchange that keeps him operational. He feels the white light before he understands it. It arrives in his dark side awareness, the way a detonation arrives before its sound does. The pressure wave first, physical and total, hitting his force senses with an intensity that makes him grip the arms of the meditation chair. Not pain, something worse than pain. A blast of pure light side energy radiating from a direction he knows, from a force signature he has been monitoring for 13 years. That should not, that cannot, that is not possible. He sits with this for 4 seconds. Then he opens his eyes, and the yellow in them is very, very still. He knows what has happened. He does not need to analyze it. He does not need confirmation or report or secondary intelligence. He has been a student of kyber crystals since before Anakin Skywalker was born, has understood the bleeding process at a level that goes beyond technique into the foundational physics of force-matter interaction, has known since the day he directed Vader to acquire a crystal that the crystal's light side memory was a variable he was managing rather than eliminating. He managed it for 13 years. The management has ended. He rises from the chair with the specific, unhurried quality of a man who is extremely angry and has spent 8 decades developing the discipline to ensure that anger produces precision rather than reaction. He crosses to his communications console. He opens the channel to the Executor. The channel opens in the Executor's communications bay, and Vader is still holding the white blade when it does. He deactivates it. The white light disappears. The room returns to its standard lighting, and for one moment, the standard lighting seems insufficient. Too gray, too flat, missing a frequency it was producing 30 seconds ago that everything now lacks. He answers the channel. Palpatine's face in the holographic display is composed. This is the most dangerous configuration of his face, not the warmth performance, not the open cruelty he displays when cruelty serves, but the composure of a man who has decided what is going to happen next, and is informing the situation of his decision. "You have been busy," Palpatine says. "My master, do not." 2 words, quiet, with no theatrical weight behind them, which is how you know they are serious. "I felt it, Lord Vader. I felt it from Coruscant." Do you understand what that means? That I felt it from Coruscant? Vader looks at the holographic face of the man who has been his master for 13 years, his mentor for 6 years before that, the architect of everything he became and everything that was taken from him. And he feels the white blade on his belt, deactivated, present, permanent, and he makes the calculation that the situation requires. "Yes," Vader says. "I understand what it means." "Then you understand," Palpatine says, "that what you have done is not a private matter. It is not a spiritual exercise. It is a declaration." The yellow eyes hold him across the distance between Coruscant and the Executor. "I want you here. Tonight, you will have me there," Vader says when I have secured the Inquisitor deployment. The Inquisitors will deploy as planned. They require final coordination from the Executor before departure. I am their commanding officer. Their deployment is my operational responsibility. He pauses. "I will be on Coruscant by morning." A silence on the channel that Vader reads as recalculation. Palpatine processing whether the delay is tactical resistance or genuine operational necessity, running the variables of what Vader's state means for his level of control over the next 18 hours. "By morning," Palpatine says. Yes, the channel closes. Vader stands in the communications bay with his hand on the white-bladed lightsaber and the calculation he just ran still running. He has 12 hours. He does not go to Coruscant in the morning. The Inquisitors deploy at dawn, the fifth brother and the seventh sister in a pair, given the coordinates Vader has prepared for them. Coordinates that are technically in the right sector and will take them toward Tatooine on a trajectory that will require 3 days to arrive rather than 1, because of the particular hyperspace routing he has selected, which appears efficient on paper and is not efficient in practice. But the Inquisitors have never been strong in navigational mathematics, and Vader wrote the route himself so. There is no officer to question it. 3 days. He has given Obi-Wan 3 days instead of 4. He goes to his private quarters and removes his helmet. He does this rarely, and never in spaces with recording systems, which his private quarters do not have, because he removed them 6 years ago in a maintenance operation he logged as a ventilation upgrade, and which Palpatine has either not noticed or not chosen to surface. He removes the helmet and sets it on the desk, and sits in the chair across from it, and looks at it. The helmet looks back with its fixed expression, 2 lenses, angular, the permanent performance of absolute authority that has been the face the galaxy knows for 13 years. He looks at it with the detachment of someone examining an object that is also, in some unresolved way, themselves. He reaches up and touches his face. The scarring is comprehensive. The burns from Mustafar that the suit manages environmentally but cannot repair. He knew this. He has known this for 13 years in the way you know something you have decided not to think about. Completely, with the full knowledge filed precisely in the place where you keep things you are not thinking about. He thinks about it now. He puts the helmet back on. Then he goes to the bridge and issues the orders for the Executor to make for Coruscant, and the Executor turns in space and enters hyperspace, and 12 hours later it emerges above Coruscant in the gray morning of the capital's upper atmosphere, and Vader takes a shuttle to the Imperial Palace and walks through corridors that clear ahead of him and arrives at the throne room doors. He opens them himself. Palpatine is on the throne this time. This is the configuration of formality, the full throne, the elevated position, the guards in their crimson at the room's perimeter. The configuration that says, this is not a conversation between 2 people, this is a meeting between a master and an instrument, and the instrument is being evaluated. Vader walks the length of the throne room without altering his pace, and stops at the appropriate distance, and does not bow. He has always bowed. 13 years of the bow, the slight forward angle of the helmet, the deliberate acknowledgement of hierarchy that Palpatine receives the way a circuit receives current, the gesture that has been a component of every meeting they have had in this room. He does not bow. Palpatine looks at him from the throne for a long moment. "Show me," he says. Vader draws the lightsaber. He ignites it. The white blade fills the throne room, not the red that these walls have known for 6 years of Vader's audiences, not the particular darkness that a red blade casts by being light that has been corrupted. White, clean and complete and resonant, the tone of it filling the space the way a tuning fork fills a room, and the crimson guards at the perimeter shift, not retreat, but shift, the body's involuntary response to something that their training did not prepare them for. Palpatine looks at the white blade. His face does not change. This is, Vader thinks, the last truly extraordinary thing about him, that even now, facing something he did not control and did not predict, his face remains a decision. 13 years, Palpatine says. Yes, and you believe this changes your situation. I believe, Vader says, that it changes yours. Palpatine rises from the throne. Not urgently. He unfolds from it with the deliberate quality of great age and greater power, and when he stands he reaches into his robes, and the 2 hidden lightsabers are in his hands and ignited before the motion is complete. Red blades. The Sith red of weapons that were bled by a man who has been bleeding crystals since before Anakin Skywalker's mother was born. The red of someone who has never experienced the doubt that makes crystals impure. Your grief made the crystal weak, Palpatine says, moving down the throne steps. It was always going to break. I was patient. I expected it. You did not expect this, Vader says. No, Palpatine says. I expected you to break toward the dark. Completely, to fall further in rather than, he stops on the last step, looking at the white blade. This is unprecedented. Yes, Vader says. It is. He moves. Vader has fought Palpatine in training scenarios, in controlled demonstrations of technique, in the specific sparring that Sith masters conduct with apprentices to calibrate the apprentice's progress. He has never fought him without restraint. Palpatine has never fought without restraint. The difference is immediate and total. 2 red blades against 1 white, and Palpatine moves with the speed of a man whose mastery of the Force renders age almost irrelevant, not fast in the way of youth, but precise in the way of someone who has fought 10,000 times and learned which efficiency of motion eliminates the need for speed. He attacks from angles. He generates pressure not through power, but through geometry, finding positions where Vader's blade cannot cover 2 threats simultaneously. Vader does not try to overpower him. He endures. This is the calculation he made in 12 hours, that the white blade's advantage is not force and not speed, but something Palpatine's red blades do not have, and cannot generate. The white crystal does not strain. It does not require the dark side's amplification to maintain its output. It burns at a steady, complete frequency that has nothing to prove, and nothing to sustain, and nothing it is performing, and against an opponent who has spent 80 years optimizing his technique to exploit the dark side's specific character, the rage, the grief, the hunger that makes dark side power enormous but also legible. The white blade is something he has never calibrated against. Vader takes cuts. He absorbs them. He does not let pain redirect him, because pain is the medium he has lived in for 13 years, and it is no longer a navigational system. Palpatine drives him back toward the viewport. Vader lets himself be driven. Then Palpatine commits to a closing strike. The geometry of it requires full extension. Both blades driving toward a position Vader's single blade cannot cover without lateral movement. And Vader does not move laterally. He steps inside. Directly inside, into the space between the committed blades, where there is a quarter-second gap that exists in every 2-blade closing strike when the wielder has extended fully. His left hand finds Palpatine's right wrist. The Force grip closes. Not hard. Completely the distinction matters. Hard implies effort, and this requires none. Because the white blade's clarity feeds the grip the way a clean channel feeds current. Palpatine's wrist stops moving and stays stopped, and 1 red blade drops, deactivated by the pressure on the hilt control. Palpatine's left blade drives toward Vader's neck. Vader's white blade intercepts it at the hilt. The Force push that follows is not a technique he plans. It arrives from somewhere below planning, from the same place the transmission arrived from, the place where Padme lives and the Temple children live, and the crack that started over Alderaan has been widening toward. The place where the grief was compressed into the crystal and has now been returned and has become something else. Something that is not grief anymore, and is not rage, and is not any of the dark side's functional emotions, but is instead the thing that remains when all of those burn away. Palpatine leaves the ground. He travels across the throne room in a controlled arc. Not a fall, not a tumble, but a movement from one position in space to another, conclusive and complete, and hits the far wall and stays there for 1 second, held by the Force, and in that second Vader crosses the room, and the white blade finds the place below the yellow eyes where the Sith Lord has lived for 80 years. It holds there. Not striking. Held, this is where you tell me, Vader says, that killing me is your only option. That without the dark side I cannot survive. That I have made an irreversible error. Palpatine looks at the white blade from 2 centimeters. His face, finally, has lost the decision. What is behind it is something Vader has never seen there before. The raw machinery of a man who has been afraid for 80 years, and has spent 80 years ensuring that fear is his instrument, rather than his condition, and who is now, for the first time, afraid of something outside his instrument's range. You won't, Palpatine says. His voice is very quiet. You need me. I needed you, Vader says, when I didn't know what I was. That condition has changed. He deactivates the white blade. Then he ignites it again. Immediately, in the same motion, a single continuous action, directly through the center of the darkness that has been wearing Sheev Palpatine's face for 80 years. The throne room goes white. Then, quiet. Then only the sound of the mechanical breathing and the hum of the white blade, and the guards at the perimeter who have not moved because they were not trained for this either, and whose training is no longer the relevant variable. Vader stands in the quiet center of it. Done. The throne room holds its silence, like a held breath. The Crimson Guards do not move. They are trained for threats, for violence, for the specific choreography of protecting a man who has spent 80 years ensuring he never needed protecting, and they are not trained for this. For the aftermath of something that has no protocol, no chain of command response, no imperial procedure that maps onto a throne room where the Emperor is dead, and the man who killed him is standing in the center of it with a white blade and no obvious next move. Vader looks at them. Go, he says. They go. Not fleeing, withdrawing, with the careful precision of people who understand that the situation has changed in ways that require reassessment before engagement. The doors close behind the last of them. The throne room is empty except for him and what he has done and the white blade still in his hand, humming its single clear tone into the silence. He deactivates it. He stands in the throne room of the Imperial Palace for exactly 3 minutes, which is what it takes for the secondary systems to confirm what happened here. The biometric monitors, the force-sensitive detectors the palace runs in every major chamber, the silent Imperial intelligence passive surveillance architecture that records everything in this building at all times. 3 minutes for the confirmation to propagate up the reporting chain. 3 minutes before someone in the Imperial Intelligence Directorate receives a reading that requires a decision about what to do with it. He uses the 3 minutes. Not to plan. The plan exists, has existed since the Executor, since 12 hours of sitting with the white blade and the weight of what it implied and what it required. He uses the 3 minutes to be still, to be in this room, on this planet, in this moment, without moving toward the next one yet. Padme would have known what to do with the Empire after Palpatine. She understood political architecture in ways he never did. The systems, the levers, the precise sequence of actions required to dismantle a structure this large, without the collapse killing more people than the structure was killing. He does not have that knowledge. He has something else, the names of 6 people across the galaxy who do. Senators, 2 of them. A former Republic judge. An Alliance commander whose strategic intelligence he has been reading for 6 months, with the specific attention of someone who respects the mind behind it. An Imperial Moff who has been filing reports for 3 years whose subtext, read correctly, says I am waiting for someone to give me a different order. He has the names. He has the authority, the apparatus of the Empire, whatever it is worth now, still routes through him in the absence of anyone else it can route through. He has 12 hours before the Intelligence Directorate's confirmation propagates far enough to trigger a fleet response. And he intends to use those 12 hours to make the fleet response a decision with more than one option. But first, he goes to the secondary communications center, his center, the one with the encryption protocols that don't route through Palpatine's monitoring, which are now academically unnecessary but habit persists, and opens the channel. One frequency. One destination. Tatooine does not answer for 40 seconds, which means Obi-Wan is either asleep, which is unlikely, or is making a decision about whether to answer, which is more likely. The channel opens. Audio only, the way it always is with this frequency. Silence for a moment. Then, Anakin. The name in Obi-Wan Kenobi's voice, after 19 years, after everything, lands somewhere below the armor and below the machinery and below the 13 years of what Darth Vader was, and finds the place where Anakin Skywalker still lives, smaller and more battered than he was, but present. Genuinely present. The way something is present, when it has refused to leave. It's done, Vader says. Another silence. He can hear, through the channel's audio, the ambient sound of the Tatooine desert at night, wind against stone, the faint whistle of the moisture vaporators. The sound of a place where nothing important has happened for 19 years and everything important was being held until it could happen somewhere else. Are you? Obi-Wan stops. Starts again, with the precision of a man choosing words from a very large inventory of possible words. Are you all right? Vader considers this question. It is a question that deserves a real answer rather than a functional one, and giving real answers is something he has not done in 13 years, and the practice will require rebuilding. No, he says. Not yet. No, Obi-Wan agrees, with the understanding of someone who knows exactly how long not yet has been waiting to be said. Not yet. There is a great deal of work before Tatooine. This is not the story of that work, the communications, the negotiations, the careful sequenced transmission of Imperial command codes to people who have been positioned, knowingly or not, to receive them. The 6 names and what they do with the authority routed through them over the following 72 hours. The fleet commanders who stand down when standing down is presented as the legitimate order from the legitimate command structure, rather than as surrender, which it is not, which matters to people whose identity is organized around the distinction. The worlds that receive the news of Palpatine's death in ways that require management, and the worlds that receive it in ways that require nothing, because they have been waiting for exactly this since the moment it became something you could wait for. The alliance is the most difficult, and the most important, which is the correct order. He does not contact them directly. He contacts Obi-Wan, who contacts a senator, who contacts a general, who contacts Princess Leia Organa in whatever ship she is currently aboard in whatever configuration the fleet is currently in. And the message that arrives to her is not from Vader, and is not attributed to Vader, but contains within it specific intelligence that only Vader could have, and specific guarantees that only Vader could make. And Leia Organa is a woman who has been doing political intelligence work since before she was a senator, and she reads the message's actual author in 30 seconds. What she does with that reading is her decision, and she makes it, and the decision she makes is the decision of someone who has been fighting for something specific, rather than against something general. Who cares about the outcome more than the aesthetics of how the outcome arrives? The Alliance does not stand down. The Alliance is not asked to stand down. What changes is a set of fleet coordinates, and a set of command system access codes, and a set of introductions between people who have been on opposite sides of a war, and now need to be on the same side of a reconstruction. And the introductions are not comfortable, and they are not meant to be comfortable, and they happen anyway. 72 hours of this. Then Tatooine. The shuttle sets down on a ridge above the Lars homestead as the second sun touches the horizon. He chose the ridge deliberately. The homestead is not his destination, not yet. And arriving at the door of the place where his son has lived for 16 years in the first minutes of whatever this is, would be a failure of the most basic kind of patience. He can wait on a ridge. He has been waiting for longer than this with less justification. He removes the helmet. He does this standing on the ridge in the open Tatooine air, in the last light of the setting suns. And the air hits his face with the heat and the dryness and the specific particulate quality of a desert that does not moderate itself for anyone. He breathes it. The respirator cycles, still necessary. The lungs still requiring assistance. This has not changed and will not change, but the suit is lighter now, the black armor replaced with gray. The massive physical presence of Darth Vader's silhouette reduced to the functional minimum of a man who needs some assistance and no longer needs to look like something the galaxy should fear. He looks like what he is. Something after. He holds the helmet for a moment. Then he sets it on the ground beside him. He stands on the ridge and watches the homestead below. The homestead is quiet. The vaporators cycle. One light in the kitchen window. Baru, probably, or Owen doing the end-of-day accounting that farmers do when the light goes. The ordinary sounds of a life that has been ordinary by design, that has been ordinary as an act of protection, and that has done its job. Then the homestead door opens, and Luke comes out. He does not look at the ridge. He does not know there is anything on the ridge. Anakin is careful about his Force presence now, has been practicing the suppression techniques that Obi-Wan's channel conversations have refined over 72 hours of intermittent contact, the layering that makes him present, but not broadcasting. Luke does not feel him on the ridge, or if he does, he reads it as the general hum of the desert's Force life, rather than as a specific person. Luke walks to the edge of the homestead's upper platform and leans against the railing and looks at the suns. He is not tall yet, still filling in, still becoming. The Force around him is extraordinary. Anakin can feel it from here. bright and vast and potential heavy in the way of stars before their cores ignite, carrying the specific genetic signature of two people who loved each other across every obstacle the galaxy could construct, until the galaxy constructed one that worked. He has his mother's precision. He has her stillness when she was watching something important. Anakin looks at his son watch the suns go down, and his eyes do something that the suit's environmental management systems were not, until recently, capable of accommodating. They are capable now. The gray suit is more honest about what it manages. He does not go down the ridge. Not tonight. Tonight is for this, for standing on a ridge above a life that exists and is intact, for seeing that the mission his body decided on a burning planet has been completed in the only way that mattered. Luke is alive. Luke is ordinary in the ways that matter, and extraordinary in the ways that will matter later. The galaxy he is going to live in is not the galaxy Anakin left for him, and the distance between those two galaxies is the measurement of what these 72 hours and 19 years and one white blade were for. A footstep on the sand beside him. Obi-Wan does not speak immediately. He simply comes to stand beside Anakin on the ridge and looks at the same scene below. And the silence between them is not the silence of two men who have nothing to say. It is the silence of two men who have said most of it already. Across 19 years and a private channel, and 72 hours of reconstruction work, and one conversation on a Coruscant frequency at 3 a.m. And what remains does not need to be said so much as stood in together. The suns are nearly down. He looks like you. Obi-Wan says quietly. Anakin watches Luke at the railing. The boy shifts slightly, comfortable in his own solitude, at ease with the suns and the desert and the ordinary end of an ordinary day. He has her eyes, Anakin says. They stand together on the ridge, and the suns complete their descent, and the Tatooine sky does what it does at that hour. Turns the horizon into something that should be painful and is instead the opposite of painful, the specific beauty of a place that is hard in every other way, offering the one soft thing it has. Luke watches until the last light goes. Then he straightens, turns, and goes back inside. The door closes. The kitchen light stays on. Obi-Wan, what do we do now? Anakin looks at the homestead below. At the closed door, the lit window, the vaporators cycling in the dark. We go down, he says. In the morning. When he can see us coming. Obi-Wan is quiet for a moment. He'll have questions. Yes, a great many questions. Yes, Anakin looks at him. We'll answer them. Obi-Wan looks back, and his face in the last Tatooine light is the face of a man who has been carrying something for a very long time, and has reached the place where putting it down is finally, genuinely possible. All right, he says. In the morning. They stand on the ridge in the dark above the homestead where the light is on, and the force around them hums, not with the roiling of the dark side, not with the institutional weight of a Jedi order, but with something quieter and more fundamental, the frequency of the living force running through a desert, and a kitchen light, and a boy who does not know yet what is coming toward him with the morning. The white lightsaber on Anakin's belt catches the last of the light, holds it. Then the dark comes fully, and the light is gone, and the only light left is the kitchen window below, and two men breathing the same desert air on a ridge above everything that still remains. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.